The Masterworks program at IPS is like the jewel in the crown of everything that they've learned through their 4 years at IPS. All of their researching capabilities, all their idea generation, all of their writing capabilities, and in the very end, they have something that they are the expert in. And in the very end, they have something that they are the expert in. And in the very end, they have something that they are. Like the jewel in the crown of everything that they've learned through their 4 years at IPS. All of their researching capabilities, all their idea generation, all of their writing capabilities, and in the very end, they have something that they are the expert in.
Have you ever wondered how a song could go from just an idea to be seamlessly streamed on your phone with just a click of a button? There's a long process to get your song from just an idea to streaming platforms. But the first step is writing. There are a good chunk of people that write their own songs, but in the industry, there are an even bigger chunk of writers that write songs for other people. This is Max Martin. He wrote songs like I Kissed a Girl, Roar, Teenage Dream, and all these other songs. But he wrote all these for Katy Perry. But what happens after the song is written? When the artist has the written songs, they go to record it. And after they record it, the producer goes in and puts all the pieces together to make a finished song. Now, what if I told you, then they give it to the distributor, who puts it on all streaming platforms, so we can listen to it whenever we want. Now, what if I told you that just in the past year, I did all this by myself by making my own very own mini album or EP. Hi. I'm Cole Peter John Winny, and this is my Masterworks presentation, Music Moves, a musical journey throughout my years at IPS. I'll be focusing on my process of writing, recording, producing, and releasing an EP, which is pretty much an album with half as many songs, but more on that later. And by the way, the song you heard at the beginning of my presentation was the intro song to my EP. Ever since I was young, I've been exposed to music from people around me. When I was a toddler, my mom would sing Puff the Magic Dragon to me before I fell asleep and other musical tales. In preschool, one of the staff members, Louise Escalier, would play the guitar and we would all sing along. Also, whenever we were in my mom's car, we would play our old CDs. Then there were school Bix concerts, where the students got to play the instruments themselves and not just have the instruments played to them. And I, along with some other friends, created a cover band called the Undercover Band. Ironic. Because we practiced in the undercover area during lunch hours. And with help from our music teacher, Cindy Fairbank, who's here today, we landed our first gig at the Halloween concert. Along the way, I learned guitar from Louise, the drums from a school concert, and I bought a beat maker. And all these experiences helped fire up my musical obsession. But I always wanted to do more than just listen to other people's music. I wanted to write music. I thought if I could play the instruments these famous musicians could play, why couldn't I write songs like them too? I have loved making music ever since the time I first found out about instruments. I have been writing songs by myself or with my friends and family since I was 5 years old. And ever since then, I've wanted to make a musical project to go up on Spotify and get my name out there in the industry. So I thought the first step would be getting so many instruments and hardware to fill my room to the brim with musical things. But when I sat down to record my first songs, it was a lot harder than I thought it would be. It turned out that you can't just get all the resources to make music because you need the skill and creativity, which was just blooming in my head. I realized that when songs I made didn't turn out how I wanted. So, I kept recording and practicing my production until I got a product that actually sounded like a song. That's when I knew that I had grown as an artist and might be able to make an album myself. That was about 3 or 4 years ago, around the time I joined IPS. And for some reason, not until this year, I hadn't really sat down and said that I wanted to write an album because of silly excuses like, oh, I'm busy, or I have homework. Well, that one's valid. But all I did was make meaningless songs that I had to finish, that I didn't finish, and stayed on my computer for no one to hear. At least until this year. My story starts in early October. Ryan, my external advisor, took me for a day to Rob Bailey's music studio to have a recording session with the real artist. During the session, I took a lot of notes. This day got me really inspired by showing me someone else's work so I could get excited about what I was going to make for my project. I realized early on in the year, around a month after the studio day, that an album was a lot to handle. And after researching, I realized I bit off way more than I could chew by saying I could make one. So I downsized. An EP strays away from the normal album, around 10 songs, into about half as many. I had to adapt the format of an album to still tell a full story while on a smaller scale. Here's my format for my EP. 1, intro. 2, start of the story. 3, middle of the story. 4, middle of the story. 5, end of the story. And 6, outro. I followed this exactly to tell the story through an EP. Now, talking about EPs, here's some background of what my musical piece is. The EP was introduced in the USA in 1952, and they started getting issued in Britain just 2 years later in 1954. EPs were usually a compilation of singles or an album sampler. They were also played at 45 RPM on a record player on 7-inch discs. As they were smaller projects, instead of having around 5 songs on each side like a standard record, it had about 2 songs on each side. This made the album quite a bit smaller, in actual size and not just playing time. The Radio Corporation of America, the RCA, had the most financial success through Elvis Presley, who put out 28 EPs in just 11 years, between 1956 and 1967. Many of Elvis's EPs charted the new EP Billboard charts. Now, I might not be as successful as Elvis Presley yet, but I started writing my EP in November. I first thought about what the heck my EP was going to be written about. And since Masterworks is like the big finale of our 4 years at IPS, I thought it would be fitting to make my EP about my experiences through my 4 years at IPS. But of course, I needed to make this the best EP ever, so I decided to add an intro song and a song about the future to flesh it out. Here is my writing process for one of my songs. How I start writing my songs is lyrics first and then chords. And usually, lyrics come to me randomly when I hear a certain phrase that sounds cool or a rhyme scheme that I think of. But when writing my grade 6 song, I already had an idea of what it was going to be about. On the surface, this song sounds quite happy and upbeat, but behind that is actually quite a sad topic. I joined IPS 2/3 into the year. It was just 2 weeks before the COVID lockdown. So that's the overlying topic. So keep that in mind. To start off, I needed to write the first verse. I wanted to try and get back into the mindset I had during lockdown and my feelings I had during COVID. I wrote about all these feelings that I was having and things racing through my head with the lack of human connection and fear I had. Well, we all had. I wrote this when I was sitting in bed in about 15 minutes, as my bed is where I spent most of lockdown. How I wrote my pre-chorus was just by looking around my room and naming things that don't really matter if I was to die of COVID. Which was so gruesome, but that's how I wrote it. And also, how I have no energy to do anything when I pretty much can't go outside. When I got to the chorus, I wanted it to feel like I'm getting all my anger out on how I couldn't do anything when this pandemic was happening. I thought about how I felt when I woke up and how I didn't have any energy even after sleeping. I remembered how much I wanted to get the vaccine to increase the chances of this being over with, and how that was kind of a weird feeling, because usually I wouldn't want to get a shot. So I wrote this line. It's like a shot that you actually want to get. It messes with your mind. It pulses in the back of your head. When I was writing the bridge, I didn't write any chords for the first half. For the first half of it, so it's just me improvising on my guitar with an underwater effect on it. And that's really funny because this is the only part I wrote lyrics after I wrote the guitar part. Then in the second half, I went back to the root chords of the chorus. I wrote these 4 lines in about a minute or so, just to emphasize the point of how I only had 2 weeks with these kids, and I really did not know how to think about them when we switched to online school. So I decided to repeat these lines multiple times. Repeat these 4 lines multiple times to flesh out the bridge. I was trying to think of something that rhymes with feel, so I went on Rhyme Zone and found a word, and I decided on eel. Don't ask me why. And that's an example of how I like to write my songs. Now let's get on to how I record my songs. The first bump in the road, in this long road of my recording process, was I recorded my first 2 songs without soundproofing. And if you didn't know, when you record without soundproofing, this makes your vocals sound super tinny with a lot of background noise. One sec. So I needed to re-record my grade 6 song and vocals and my grade 7 song vocals. This is my soundproofing solution to making my entire room soundproofed. 2 big sound panels with a blanket over them and my microphone and a chair in the middle. I recorded guitar for 5 out of the 6 songs on my EP with my Yamaha Pacifica. I sadly did not use many difficult guitar parts. All of them were mostly rhythm guitar, which are chords with strumming, except for a couple of songs where I used power chords, which is played like this. Recording the guitars was a really fun process that I didn't have many mishaps with. Then I recorded bass for all the songs. When I record bass, I try to find the root note of each chord that I play on the guitar and try and make a simple bass line with those notes. I also tried to layer my basses with a digital bass to make it sound more full. I recorded pianos and synths and drums next to layer up my production. But how I recorded my drums was actually not the same way that I recorded my pianos. It's not really how you would think. Music production is a complicated process with many layers to it. How I start production after I record everything I needed is start by putting in MIDI instruments. What is a MIDI instrument, you might ask? Well, let me tell you. A MIDI instrument is a preloaded sounds in your music software that can be played with a keyboard or clicked in manually, note by note. MIDI instruments can be literally any instrument you can think of, like guitar, drums, piano, bass, synths, violins, trumpets, literally anything. But what I used it for most in my EP was drums. Every single drum track in my EP is MIDI drums. I used MIDI drums because when you record live drums, it has to be a very well soundproofed room, which mine is not, as you saw, and also have to be quantized. Quantization in music production is the process of fixing the timing of a performance to a musical grid, divided by beats or pretty much getting everything in time. Quantizing drums is such a tedious process that a lot of producers pay other people almost $100 or more to do it for them. With MIDI, you don't need to do that because it either automatically quantized it for you or it's already quantized when you click it in manually. Here are some clips of MIDI instruments to show you what they are. So these, if you can believe it, are MIDI drums. And here are MIDI piano. MIDI trumpets. It actually isn't just trumpets. It's a bit more than trumpets, but here is all of them played together. So there you go. But the hub for all your music production, including MIDI, is your DAW, otherwise known as DAW, or Digital Audio Workstation. What is a DAW? These are computer programs used for composing, producing, recording, mixing, and editing audio in MIDI. DAWs come in many forms and softwares. Ever since I had my first iMac in 2020, I have been using GarageBand, made by Apple. Now, by show of hands, how many people know of GarageBand? Now, a couple of you might know about this, but Logic Pro X, also made by Apple, is basically GarageBand, but much, much better. Some people would say the pro version of GarageBand, but it's not free. So when it came down to me doing my Masterworks, I decided I needed to step away from GarageBand and use something more professional. And $250 later, I got Logic Pro X. Now, finally, in the producing process, we have mixing. At its most basic explanation, mixing involves combining all the sounds received from the multi-track recording and balancing them in levels, making some louder than others, and in the mixing stage is also when I like to add my audio effects. Now, I might do some of these earlier in production, but for the sake of the presentation, I'll explain all of these main audio effects in this slide. When talking about plugins in your DAW, one of the most used and recognizable is reverb. When in your DAW, you can add reverb to pretty much any audio track that is in the project. An effect whereby a sound, especially that is produced by an amplified musical instrument, is made to reverberate slightly. An example of reverb is if you stood in the middle of an empty room and yelled. The sound from your mouth would reverberate off the walls slightly. A lot of people confuse reverb with echo, but as you can see on this graph, they are quite different. Reverb is the constant overlapping of the audio that gets quieter over time. As you can see here, and echo is echo is more of a call and response or constant repetition of a sound that also gets quieter over time, as you can see here. EQ stands for equalization, which is a plugin intended to manipulate the frequency content of your recordings and help all of the elements in your production work together sonically. Basically, just adjusting the volume of a certain section of the track, the low end, mids, or high end. A compressor is used to reduce a signal's dynamic range. That is, to reduce the difference between the loudest and the quietest parts of your audio signal to flatten out the audio track. So if your audio goes above the threshold or below the threshold, it'll kind of pull them in a bit to make it not clip or sound a bit cleaner. Pitch correction allows fine-tuning recorded vocals by editing pitch even when a note is just slightly off key. It's a delicate correction that can adjust minor mistakes in vocal tracks. Now here are clips from our grade 6 song to demonstrate audio effects. This is going to get a little awkward because it's just my raw vocals. So put your head in your hands if you need. When you have your... Sorry. These will all sound quite similar, but I'll tell you what to listen for in each clip. Pitch correction should sound quite on key. There we go. Now we can do it. When you have your keys to go ahead, when and if you have enough energy to be dead. Okay. And then we have reverb. And reverb, it should reverberate slightly and sound a bit more full. It might sound quite similar, but when you have your keys to go ahead, when and if you have enough energy to be dead. Okay. Now we go on to EQ. This should sound a bit more crispy and not as much noise in the low end and boosted high end. When you have
your keys to go ahead when and if you have enough energy to be dead.
Okay, and now we go on to compression. This should sound like a more flattened track where there isn't a big difference between the loud parts and the quiet parts.
When you have your keys to go ahead when and if you have enough energy to be dead.
Okay, and now this is all the audio effects together.
When you have your keys to go ahead when and if you have enough energy to be dead.
Now this is it layered with a backing vocal, which should sound a lot more full.
When you have your keys to go ahead when and if you have enough energy to be dead.
Okay, that concludes my process of making my songs. Now we get on to getting my songs published. CD Baby is the distributor that I used, as I explained in the beginning, a distributor is when you give them your music and all your artist info and pretty much your entire personality and personal info you own, now they own. Anyways, they will distribute your songs to the most popular digital music platforms, such as Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Pandora Radio, and 150 other streaming platforms. The benefit of using this distributor is that you don't have to pay an annual fee in order to keep your music online. So after I gave CD Baby all the information about the EP, it took about a week to be approved and put up on streaming platforms, which was actually pretty fast. What I didn't know is that if you made any edits to your release before it had been, or after it's been sent for approval, it has to get sent for approval again. And of course, I did this 5 days before the release, but luckily, in my favor, it turned out all right. CD Baby is great for pricing because it's not an annual fee, as it's a one-time purchase of $10 to keep your music up on streaming platforms forever. And for smaller artists like myself, I don't expect to make much money off my music, so it's quite nice to have such a low and approachable price point to get my music out there. My final step was making a wicked album cover. So I resorted to the best tool on the internet, Stable UI, which is an AI image generating software. It took about 10 minutes. It took about 10 minutes until it made one that I liked, and I prompted it by saying, make an indie album cover about school. So I could literally get anything from that. But I edited it in Canva, and from input from Isaac, I finally chose one. This is my final cover for my EP, Opportunities Are Meant to Be Caught. It looks pretty weird, but it's pretty cool. Nope. And now, here's the moment you've all been waiting for, my grade 6 song. This is a clean version, so if anything sounds a bit weird in the lyrics, that's why.
The state of the world's decreasing. I don't know how they feel, but how I feel is that time we'll spend isn't time at all, cause we all just fear the end. But when we uncriticize and rethink our state of being, corrugated cardboard doesn't change, but our mind does when it fears the sickness. When you have nothing but your pillow beside you, when you have nothing but your post-its to lie to, when you have your keys to go ahead, when and if you have enough energy to be dead. It's like I hit a wall before I get out of bed, like a bruise in the middle of your forehead, or when you get pushed past the line, except that happens every day. And all the time, it's like a shot that you actually wanna get. It misses with your mind and pulses in the back of your head. Or when you get pushed past the line, except that happens every day. And all the time, the state of my mind's decreasing. I don't know how they feel, but how I feel is that time not spent isn't time worth living when you're living online. When you have nothing but your pillow beside you, when you have nothing but your post-its to lie to, When you have your keys to go ahead, when if you have enough energy to be dead. It's like I hit a wall before I get out of bed, like a bruise in the middle of your forehead, or when you get pushed past the line, except that happens every day. And all the time, it's like a shot that you actually wanna get. It messes with your mind and pulses in the back of your head. Or when you get pushed past the line, except that happens every day. And all the time. Friends are 2 weeks, they don't know how I wanna feel. It's all just online. Wanna need an electric eel. Friends are 2 weeks, didn't know how I wanna feel. It's all just online. Wanna need an electric eel. Friends are 2 weeks, I don't know how I wanna feel. It's all just online. Wanna need an electric eel. Friends are 2 weeks, don't know how I wanna feel. It's all just online. Wanna need an electric eel. It's like I hit a wall before I get out of bed, like a bruise in the middle of your forehead, or when you get pushed past the line, except that happens every day. And all the time, it's like a shot that you actually wanna get. It messes with your mind and pulses in the back of your head. Or when you get pushed past the line, except that happens every day. And all the time.
And if you want to listen to the rest of my final product, you can stream it right now on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, and 150 other streaming platforms. When you search up Cole Space W, or Opportunities Are Meant to Be Caught, or Cole Space W Radio on Spotify, because it doesn't work otherwise, which is really weird. Okay. If I look past the procrastination, the small mishaps to do with my recording situation, and the other small assorted mistakes and challenges, I think this has been the best school project ever that I had the opportunity to be able to do. In a way, having it all come to the end is truly saddening. But this project has broken the barrier into the industry, and now that I've done all that, it will just give me an excuse to put more music out there and more content in the near future. Throughout my Masterworks, I've been able to use a small hobby to make a huge project that I've dreamt of making since I was young. Being able to use this project as a way to put my skills to the test has really been as challenging as it was life-changing. I guarantee I wouldn't have done this project without Masterworks. Whether personal projects, school projects, or even just everyday life, I will definitely be using these skills I learned from Masterworks in my time to come. Thank you to Jen for leading this entire project for us and for everyone before us. This wouldn't happen without you. Thank you to Adrian, my internal advisor, for the constant positive encouragement and telling me when I did something completely wrong in my essay. Thank you to Ryan. You've inspired me pretty much since the day I met you. And if it weren't for you, your help through this project, and feeding into my musical obsession, I don't know if I would have been doing this for my Masterworks at all. Thank you to my Nana and Grandpa, because I wouldn't be able to do my Masterworks if it wasn't for them. Thanks to my parents, but especially my mom, for nonstop asking me to listen to my project, which made me strive to make it as good as I could. And, of course, my dad for getting me access to all my musical gear and getting connection to get me a free guitar, finding a used Mac, and all the nights of countless research on my audio interface. Thank you to my class, but especially Isaac, Finn, and Cole S., for giving me constructive criticism to all my ideas and to make this EP the best it could be, and being the only people besides Ryan I had the confidence to show my songs to. And thank you to you guys for being an amazing audience. I'm Cole Winny, and this was my Masterworks project.
And we're going to go to a question and answer right now. But I think you've inspired all of us to learn more and to listen to your album. So we'll get to some questions, first from Adrian and then going to Ryan.
All right. Well done, Mr. Winny. This was an honor to work with you through this, to see your enthusiasm, your drive, and for me to get a window into just how big this project really was. I don't know, even with your presentation, I don't think we fully understand the process. We saw a little bit where you were showing us your vocals. How much time that takes, though, to tweak that and actually be able to listen to the difference and recognize what you want is not passed on through that presentation. And well done. That was a phenomenal feat.
Thank you.
The question I have for you is, there's a lot of albums out there. I mean, more albums exist in this world than any of us could possibly listen to in our lifetime. So how do you set it apart? What to you is the making of what makes a great album? One that people are like, that is a great album.
I think that having a solid story that you can listen from the beginning to the end of the album and get the idea and the entirety of the story through those, how many songs it is. And as long as it concludes at the end and like starts at the beginning and gives the clear story, I think that that's probably the best part. But also putting a lot of work into each one of the songs and not just having like duds. I don't know. That's what I like to call them, which is basically filler songs to make the album like feel longer. And that happens a lot in rap albums, which I don't appreciate as much. But a good album should either, tell a story and have it conclude. And that's what I think makes a good album.
Great, thank you.
Ryan, would you like to ask the next question?
Yes, absolutely. It was awesome, Cole. Great
Thank you.
work. So after you've been through this whole process, what do you feel is like the average listener's biggest misconception when it comes to like making an album or the process of making an album? Like, what's their biggest misconception of how it's done?
I think two things. The first one is that, this is also my misconception, but that equipment equals skill. And goes hand in hand with that is that expensive equals better. Because anyone can buy these musical equipment and have, buy whatever they want. And they can have the most expensive microphone and the most expensive computer. But in the end, you have to have the creative output that you can put into the track or into the album that actually makes a difference. Because I think that someone with creative skill can make a better album with an iPhone mic and an iPad than someone with a $5,000 mic and a $10,000 computer. And then the second thing is that once you put up your music, you're going to make money straight away. Is a big misconception, because everyone's like, oh yeah, well, if I had my songs up on Spotify, then I would be making thousands, millions, hundreds, thousands, whatever. It's not true at all. I think I haven't gotten in my first pay thing, but I did the little from Spotify. But I did a little calculation. I think I've made about 92 cents. So. Thank you guys for streaming my songs to get me that. Almost $1. I'm very excited. My goal is to get that paid off, the $10 that I paid CD Baby. So if I can make $10 in the next lifetime of mine, then it's good.
Cindy, do you have a question?
I do, yeah. Cole, Mr. Winny, it is such a pleasure to see you today and to see the progress and the process since, of course, the undercover band days. My question for you is, I'm curious if you have what's next after completing this project.
Okay, so as quite a few of you know, we're graduating this year. So when I go into Rockridge, my second choice for my elective would be composition and production. So having it's like music production classes and stuff. But I think having the skill that I learned from this, and also being able to kind of have the idea and be able to have the have CD Baby also, because now I have an account and everything. So being able to put out music is going to be a lot easier for me now that I've kind of broken the barrier. So now, whenever I make a song that I think is really good, or like I write a song, then I'm like, oh, it's not just going to sit on my computer anymore. I feel like I have that output to put it on to let everyone listen to it. And I think that that's really important, because in the beginning when I was making songs, as I said in this, they kind of just sat on my computer. So I think moving forward, it's going to be a lot easier for me to put out music. And I think it's going to give me an excuse to also work with other people and like put out music with them. So, yeah.
I think we're all looking forward to seeing more stuff from you on your Spotify channel. Please, you can speak from there if you can speak. Yeah.
All that was so awesome. One thing that I have a compliment and then a question, I guess. One thing that I noticed about that is this topic is like so vulnerable in some ways, right? It's so much part of yourself. And what I noticed that was really awesome as a songwriter to see you do is come up here with energy and charisma and a ton of humility and just be positive about it and not nervous. So all of those really great things eclipse that nervousness that you must feel of sharing your music. And I think as you go forward as an artist, you'll realize just how important an asset that is when you start performing. So my question to you is, now that you have, your entire life behind you of being passionate for music, and really a year of really throwing yourself into the recording process, do you think that you're just as stoked about the recording part as you are about the music now? And would you consider sharing those skills for other people in music when you go to high school?
Yeah. I think that I still love like every aspect of the like making a song and everything, and putting it like equally as much as putting it up, and like sharing my skills that I've learned through this would be a super cool like maybe club or something in Rockridge, or like even just I was thinking in the beginning of the year to make a YouTube channel on like kind of when you learn something new on Logic or learn a new chord progression or like something cool on the guitar or whatever, I would kind of make a video on that to teach other people about that, because if I didn't know it, then I bet a lot of other people didn't know it that could use that skill. So maybe in the future I might make a YouTube channel and like put up some music content there to teach other people. So I think that would be super cool.
Mm-hmm. That would be super cool, and I'd like to put a plug in for you being a Masterworks advisor when you are.
Oh yeah, that would be so awesome.
Well, what's really interesting in your paper, I learned so much, and that's not my field, so I started with 3 months ago. But also, your presentation, I think, did an excellent job of letting us hear the differences and what each of the layers add to your song, because I read it, but I didn't understand it, and your presentation was beautifully done.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Mr. Winny, I'm wondering if you might consider re-releasing your Cell song, because it was a little raw, so that's all.
Okay, for context, in grade 7, we had this project. Oh, grade 8. Oh, I sound so young in that song. We did a project called the Cell Project, I'm pretty sure, or like create your own cell project or whatever, where we had to like identify the different parts of a cell. And I made a rap song about the cell, and it was not mixed. I think I had 4 music tracks, so four instruments playing, and it was me rapping over it. And also, I mentioned vesicles, and I said that they were the same. I just said vesicles and a vesicle are the same thing, which is basically the plural. So I missed three parts of it. So I got a 6 on that, but that doesn't matter. It was like, I put on all that work the night before and then exported it, and then Pam gave me a 6, and I was like, okay, it doesn't matter. Yeah, definitely.
No, my question is about, I learned so much today. I had no idea all of those different ways of mixing and how just hearing things and putting them together. Now my question is around AI.
Oh yeah.
You used a lot of technology, but how do you feel about ChatGPT and being able to say, I want to sound like this artist and put in this song and make it sound like somebody else?
Yeah, so there's a big controversy that's going on right now, which is well, I think it's past, but it's, there was this AI-generated Drake in the Weeknd song that went super viral, and it got taken down from all streaming platforms because it was imitation and, like, it sounded so much like them. So, but then also ChatGPT, in Jared's class this one time, we were doing, so it was like after we did all our SATs, so we weren't just going off topic, but like, we were using ChatGPT to write a song, and Jared put in like, write a 4-line song in the sound of Billy Joel or whatever, and it came up with like lyrics for an entire song, like an entire song of lyrics with choruses, verses, everything, and that's like slightly scary. But when I thought about it more, it doesn't have the charm of having an actual person write it and put their feelings in, because AI doesn't have feelings, although not yet, but it doesn't have the emotion that an actual human would have writing a song, because it doesn't have its own experiences. It's all from other people. So it's just not the same, I don't think. And you could slightly tell that when reading the lyrics. But yeah.
I can't wait to find out what your grade 7, 8, and 9 songs
Oh
are.
yeah, so many more.
Thank you.
Questions from the floor, put your hands up. Isaac, come on up.
That was a great presentation, Mr. Winny. I was wondering what the pros and cons of using real instruments versus MIDI instruments are.
Oh. So, I'm going to use the example of guitars here. I didn't, as you saw in the slide about MIDI instruments, I didn't put in MIDI guitars. And that's because, well, at least the stock ones in Logic, they do not sound good at all. It sounds like you're plucking a string, and then it's just moved on the piano, like you can do that. So it sounds really terrible. And live guitar has that super, like, it's not you messing up, but it's having the actual human have the control over everything that you do and every little thing, and like, it just does not sound the same with MIDI. But when it comes to MIDI drums, as you can tell from my EP, it is very useful. If you can't record drums, or if you can't have the situation where you can record drums. And then, yeah, so I think that definitely live instruments are better. But when it comes down to layering up your production, MIDI instruments are a way to go, definitely.
Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Winny. Really enjoyed that, and was curious just to, as I came to understand all the process that you went through to produce this EP, and you were talking about those other, more world-famous artists, maybe it's Katy Perry, but do you understand then, like, how does she go live compared to the studio sound or what we hear through the streaming? Like, are they able to replicate that on a stage live?
Oh,
I
get what you're saying. So, when it comes down to those more popular artists that have to kind of keep up their reputation of sounding pitch perfect and sounding amazing on the recording, they have the song or snippets of their vocals, or even an entire backing vocal or whatever, playing with the instrumental that's being played on stage. Because when it comes to like Katy Perry, there's not many live instruments that are being played live. It's usually her backing track to her song, but they have all the backing vocals and stuff. And sometimes there's this one part, or not one part, there's this one time when Katy Perry played her song and then lip synced the song on her thing, and like her microphone fell off and it kept playing. And the same with Justin Bieber and stuff. So when it's played live, that's how they get it to sound so good, it kind of feels like cheating, in my opinion. Because when people go to a live show, they want the live sound. They can just listen to the song whenever they want. But that's how they get, like, sounding so good in live. But, like, I think if I ever perform live, I would not use any backing vocals. I think I would either get some friends to, like, sing back, or I don't know, something like that. But I would play live instruments and stuff.
I'm sorry, we only have time for one more question. Bodie, come on up.
Mr. Winny, that was a fantastic job. If you could take a wild guess, how long did it take to make one song?
Oh, like start to finish, like writing and then.
Write it,
Okay.
produce it, all that.
I would say if I was to sit down in one chunk, like in a stretch, Well, when it comes to my producing, it's very like scattered. I usually go back and then fix a lot of things, but multiple times. So I would say probably like 8 hours I put into each song but over multiple days. Like probably up until the release, probably about 8 hours for each song.